On the final night of the concert, Jungkook suddenly falls to his knees in front of Jimin. What he says next leaves fans screaming and sobbing in disbelief. Jimin. I can't hide it anymore. Jungkook's voice cracked over the mic, echoing across the deafening silence of the stadium. Then, before anyone could comprehend what was happening, he dropped to his knees right there under the spotlight, right in front of Jimin. The massive LED screens flickered for a heartbeat. Tens of thousands of fans who had been screaming just moments ago were now breathless. Silence wrapped the arena tighter than any spotlight could. Cameras zoomed in, hands shook, someone in the crowd gasped audibly. Jimin turned around slowly, his eyes wide and body tense, sweat glistening under the blinding lights. He looked as though time itself had betrayed him. Every breath he took now was heavier than the last. The concert wasn't supposed to end like this. Just 5 minutes earlier, the 7 members had gathered center stage for their final goodbye in Seoul, wrapping up what was meant to be a perfect world tour. Fireworks had already gone off. The confetti was still settling like snow. But Jungkook had broken formation. Without warning. Without cue. He had walked past the others, each of them exchanging confused glances, and stopped right in front of Jimin. No one moved. Not the staff, not the security, not even Taehyung, who was just one step away, frozen mid-step as if afraid a single movement would shatter the fragile moment. Jungkook's hands trembled as he lifted the mic again. I've been holding this in for too long, longer than I should have. And it's killing me every single day. The crowd erupted not into screams, but into collective sobs, murmurs, gasps, and whispered prayers. The weight of his voice felt like a confession being torn from the deepest part of him. Jimin's face hardened, his jaw clenched as he blinked fast, fighting something back, something old, something buried. I know I don't have the right timing, Jungkook said, now visibly shaking. I know this isn't the place, but maybe it's the only one I've got. Because after tonight, I don't think I can go on like nothing happened. Like nothing is happening. Jimin stepped forward. One step. Just one. He didn't speak. His eyes spoke of years of moments shared on empty stages during rehearsals, of bruises hidden beneath sleeves, of glances stolen behind cameras, of things said in silence. Don't, Jimin whispered so softly that the mic barely caught it. But Jungkook did. He heard it. And it crushed him. You asked me once why I looked away when you cried that night after the awards show, Jungkook continued, his voice raw now, bleeding into the space between them. It wasn't because I didn't care. It's because I cared too much and I didn't know how to stop. That night, the night Jimin never talked about. The one no fan ever saw. Backstage. After losing a nomination they'd all fought for. Jimin had wept quietly in the corner of their dressing room, alone. Jungkook had been the first to notice, but he never approached. He only watched from a distance. And Jimin never forgave him for that. Now, years later, on the biggest stage, with the world watching, Jungkook finally gave a voice to the ghost of that moment. I failed you then. And I think I've been failing you ever since. Jimin's lips parted, but no words came. His hands clenched into fists. And then, to everyone's surprise, he stepped even closer, barely a breath away. What are you doing, Jungkook? His voice was steel over fire. Do you know what you're starting? I'm starting the truth, Jungkook replied. Even if it ruins me. The crowd couldn't hold back anymore. Screams of confusion, of pain, of support echoed like thunder. Some fans clutched their light sticks as if trying to hold on to something real. Others simply cried. Behind them, the other members stayed still, each reacting differently. Taehyung's jaw was tight, his eyes dark. Yoongi stared at the floor, unmoving. Namjoon shifted uneasily, whispering something to Jeon that even the mic couldn't catch. Hoseok looked toward the wings, perhaps signaling the managers. But no one stopped it. Jungkook looked at Jimin now as if he wasn't afraid anymore. As if the weight had already been cast off his shoulders and was now resting in Jimin's hands. There's a part of me that never healed, and it always led me back to you, he said. Even when I didn't want it to. Jimin exhaled shakily. So, what do you want from me now? Forgiveness? Closure? A stage for your regrets? No, Jungkook whispered. I want to stop pretending. Time bent around them. Everything, the music, the lights, the cheers, faded into static. Jimin raised his eyes slowly, locking them with Jungkook's. His lips trembled, not with anger, but with exhaustion. His hands unclenched. He took one last step forward, their bodies almost brushing. And then, without a word, he pulled Jungkook up. The fans screamed, cried, fainted. The roar was deafening. But the moment between them was silent. Jimin leaned forward until only Jungkook could hear. "You always run to me too late." Then he turned around and walked away. The lights dimmed. The stage turned black. The concert was over. But something else had just begun. "You always run to me too late." Those words didn't just echo in Jungkook's ears, they detonated. His chest rose and fell like a man drowning, and even as the lights dimmed and the roar of the crowd grew faint, Jimin's silhouette walking away was all he could see. Jungkook stood there, mic still trembling in his hand, blinded not by spotlights, but by the fallout of his own confession. Backstage was chaos. The moment the members disappeared behind the curtains, staff swarmed them, trying to recover from the emotional wreckage of what had just happened on live broadcast. Phones buzzed relentlessly. Hashtags were already trending globally. Security whispered to management with growing panic, and someone shouted about shutting down the live stream servers. But none of that registered in Jungkook's mind. He stood alone in the hallway, staring at the white wall across from him. It felt too clean, too sterile for the mess inside his heart. Behind him, Namjoon's voice broke through the buzzing silence. "Jungkook, what the hell was that?" He turned slowly. Namjoon wasn't yelling. No, his voice was low, furious, sharp like broken glass. The kind of tone that meant more than just anger, it meant betrayal. "I had to say it," Jungkook replied, voice hoarse. "Say what?" Yoongi stepped in now, eyes bloodshot with exhaustion. "That you've been carrying some secret all these years? That you broke down in front of millions without telling any of us why?" Jungkook didn't flinch. "Because none of you would have understood." "No, because you didn't let us." Taehyung snapped, walking over and slamming his hand against the wall beside Jungkook. His face was flushed red, teeth clenched. "You hijacked our moment, Jungkook. That wasn't just your confession. That was our farewell. You think I planned this?" Jungkook growled, suddenly finding his fire. "You think I wanted to ruin everything? I couldn't breathe out there. Do you even understand what it feels like to stand next to someone for years and say nothing? Nothing real." Taehyung looked like he might hit him. "So now it's Jimin's fault that you've been choking on your feelings?" The name. That name twisted something in Jungkook's chest. His mouth opened, but no words came. A heavy silence followed. Until Seokjin, voice calm but ice cold, stepped forward. "Where's Jimin?" Everyone paused. He wasn't among them. He hadn't followed them backstage. Yoongi cursed under his breath. "Shit." He left. Someone checked the dressing rooms, Hoseok called, already jogging down the corridor with a staff member on his heels. Jungkook didn't move. He felt frozen in his own bones. His legs didn't respond, his mind was stuck on the last look in Jimin's eyes. Not anger. Not even hate. But something worse, something unreadable. It scared him more than any backlash from fans or label executives ever could. He stumbled into the green room. Mirrors lined the walls, bottles of water scattered across the table, makeup brushes left unattended. Jimin's jacket was still slung on the chair. His phone charger still plugged into the socket. But no Jimin. Jungkook picked up the jacket instinctively. He buried his face in it for a second, something shameful clawing through him. He felt stupid. Weak. Desperate. Behind him, Hoseok returned, shaking his head. "He's not here." "He left," Seokjin muttered. "Probably the car." Jungkook didn't wait. He ran. Down the hallway. Past the dressing rooms. Past staff trying to stop him. Security shouting his name. He didn't care. He needed to find Jimin, not for closure, not for another confession, but because something told him this time was different. Outside, Seoul's night air was sharp and cold. The loading dock behind the stadium was dimly lit, the sounds of fans still lingering far beyond the walls. And parked near the edge of the gate was one black SUV running engine, headlights on. And there, leaning against the car, arms crossed, was Jimin. Alone. Jungkook stopped in his tracks. Jimin looked up, expression unreadable. Neither spoke. The silence between them felt louder than any concert they'd ever played. You shouldn't have said that, Jimin said finally. Voice flat. Emotionless. Dangerous. Jungkook stepped closer. Then maybe you should have said something first. Jimin laughed bitterly. Oh, so now this is my fault? I didn't say that. No, you didn't have to. You humiliated me, Jungkook. You pulled me into your breakdown in front of the world like I was some character in your drama. I didn't mean to make you look like the villain. But you did, Jimin cut in. His voice trembled. You said all these things. About guilt. About truth. And left everyone wondering what the hell you meant. And you did it on the one night we were all supposed to be together, for the fans. For the team. Jungkook's eyes glistened. Because it was the only night I had the courage. Jimin stepped toward him, face inches away now. Courage, he said, voice low. You think that was courage? No, Jungkook. That was desperation. Jungkook swallowed hard. Then let me be desperate. A long pause. Jimin's chest rose and fell. His lip trembled, but this time, he didn't hide it. You always do this. You stay quiet. You watch. You pretend you're okay. Then you explode, and you drag everyone with you. Why is it always when I've already moved on that you decide to come back? Jungkook whispered, have you really moved on? And there it was. Jimin's eyes flickered. Something cracked. He looked away. I tried, he whispered. God, I tried. Jungkook stepped forward again, gently now. I know I ruined tonight. But please don't let me ruin us. Jimin didn't answer. He got into the car, closed the door, and left Jungkook in the freezing air, watching the taillights disappear into the Seoul night. Jungkook didn't cry. He couldn't. He just stood there, fists clenched, cold seeping into his bones, while inside his chest, something finally shattered. The next morning, social media had exploded. #Jungkook exploded across platforms. Fans were divided, some weeping with support, others outraged over what they perceived as betrayal. Theories flew like wildfire. Memes. Anger. Love. Petitions. Opinion pieces. It was chaos. HYBE released no statement. None of the members posted. And Jungkook turned off his phone. He hadn't left his apartment in hours. He hadn't slept. Coffee sat cold beside him. He stared at the blank wall, wondering how something that had felt like freedom now tasted like fire. Then his phone buzzed. A message. From Jimin. 2 words. Rooftop. Midnight. He read it 5 times. Then stood up. He knew what rooftop. The one where it started. The one where they almost ended years ago. And the one, maybe, where something could begin again. He looked into the mirror, face pale, eyes bloodshot, heart pounding. But he was already reaching for his keys. Midnight was waiting. And so was the truth. The wind howled that night like it remembered everything they were about to unearth. Jungkook stood at the edge of the rooftop, jacket zipped to his neck, breath fogging under the bitter midnight air. The city pulsed below him, but his heart pounded louder than any Seoul siren or honking cab could ever hope to. He ran his fingers through his hair again, trembling not from the cold, but from anticipation. From fear. What would he say? No, more importantly, what would Jimin say? Because this time, Jungkook wasn't running with a microphone. There were no lights. No crowd. No performance. Just him and the rooftop where 5 years ago, everything had gone wrong. The door creaked open behind him. Jungkook turned slowly. Jimin stepped out wearing black. A simple black sweater. Dark jeans. No makeup. No stylists. Just him, barefaced, expression unreadable, eyes sharp. He walked forward without a word. Jungkook swallowed. You came, he whispered. I told you I would, Jimin replied quietly. A pause. The wind rushed past them, pulling at their sleeves, their silence. I thought maybe, Jungkook hesitated. Maybe you were just trying to close the door. Jimin stopped a few feet away. Maybe I was. But I couldn't sleep. Jungkook nodded, lips parted as if something were trying to crawl out of him but couldn't find the shape. You remember this place? Jimin asked, looking out over the edge. How could I forget? Jungkook murmured. Jimin pointed to the far corner, where a rusted chair still sat against the bricks. You sat there, he said, on the night of the rehearsal incident. After Youngi's outburst. You didn't say anything to anyone that night. I was afraid if I opened my mouth, I'd say something I couldn't take back. And now you've done exactly that, Jimin said, eyes piercing. Jungkook took a deep breath. I didn't come here to defend myself. I came here because I need you to understand what I couldn't say before. Jimin crossed his arms. Then start talking. Years of restraint crumbled in Jungkook's throat. Do you remember that night in Tokyo, when I found you crying in the bathroom after our first major argument? Jimin didn't answer, but his eyes did. I walked away then. I told myself it wasn't my place. That you needed space. But the truth is, I didn't know how to be near your pain without taking it personally. Jimin narrowed his eyes. You think that justifies what you did on stage? No, Jungkook said quickly. Nothing justifies ambushing you like that. I regret the way I did it. But not what I said. Then let me be clear, Jimin snapped. You used my silence as your stage. Jungkook's jaw clenched. You weren't silent when you called me a coward backstage in Busan. That was different. How? Jungkook's voice broke, louder now. How is it different when you corner me in a hallway and say I'm emotionally unavailable, but when I finally say something in front of the world, you call it a betrayal? Because I said it to your face, Jungkook. Jimin roared. I didn't make a goddamn spectacle out of it. You think I was performing? Jungkook shot back. That wasn't a performance, Jimin. That was a breakdown years in the making. You're not the only one who breaks. Jimin shouted, stepping closer. You think I haven't had to pick myself off the floor after nights of rehearsing until my feet bled? After interviews where I smiled while dying inside? After seeing you flirt with silence like it was some kind of shield while I stood out there trying to be everything for everyone? Then why didn't you ever tell me? Jungkook asked, almost a whisper now. Why didn't you let me in? Jimin looked like he might cry. Or punch him. I tried, he said. God, I tried. But every time I opened up, you disappeared. Into your work. Into your head. Into that damn studio. I stopped knocking after a while. What was the point? Jungkook closed the distance, their breath mingling in the cold. The point, he said, was that I thought I had to earn your trust by becoming perfect. By never letting you see how much I was unraveling. You didn't have to be perfect, Jimin whispered, voice cracking now. You just had to be present. Jungkook blinked back tears. I didn't know how. Jimin stared at him. The anger on his face softened, not erased, but folded beneath something deeper. Sadness. History. Love. I spent so long being the strong one, Jimin said. The one who held everything together. The glue. The fixer. The smile. And all I wanted was for you to say, you don't have to do it alone. But you never did. I'm saying it now, Jungkook said. I'm saying it now with everything I have left. Jimin didn't move. Jungkook continued, softer. I never meant for this to become war between us. I wanted us to be honest. Finally. I don't know if I can trust you again, Jimin said, tears in his eyes now. Not after what happened. Not after the way you turned the most vulnerable part of our relationship into a public confession. I didn't do it to expose you, Jungkook said desperately. I did it to save myself. I was drowning in silence. And every time I looked at you, I saw everything I wanted but couldn't touch. Jimin turned away, voice shaking. You think love survives exposure like that? I think love survives everything except silence. The rooftop fell quiet. A siren wailed far in the distance. The wind tugged at their clothes. The cold bit their cheeks, but neither moved. Then Jimin slowly turned back. What do you want from me now? He asked. Jungkook looked at him, not as an idol, not as a bandmate, not as someone he'd hurt, but as the boy he had first met in that cramped dance room, full of fire and flaws and unspoken dreams. I want the chance to love you, Jungkook said. Not in secret. Not in fear. Not in fragments. Fully. Jimin's eyes searched his, as if trying to find the lie. But there was none. Only ache. And truth. I don't know if I can forgive you, Jimin said finally. Then don't, Jungkook replied. Just let me start again. Another long pause. Then, slowly, Jimin stepped closer. And for the first time in years, he touched Jungkook's face softly, trembling fingers grazing the line of his jaw. Jungkook's eyes fluttered shut. You're not the only one who is drowning, Jimin whispered. Jungkook opened his eyes. So maybe, Jimin continued, we learn to breathe again. Together. Jungkook nodded, tears falling freely now. Together. The two stood there in silence. No cameras. No noise. Just breath. Just presence. Just two hearts long denied their rhythm finally beating in time. And somewhere below them, Seoul never stopped shining. But for Jungkook and Jimin, the rooftop was the only world that mattered now. The place where they buried the silence. And maybe, just maybe, unearthed something far more powerful in its place. Love, without performance. Jungkook didn't sleep. Even after the rooftop, the closeness, the trembling breath, the crackling silence between them, he couldn't find rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Jimin's face again, not the way it was under stage lights, but under the starlight, wind in his hair, saying words that might have changed everything. You're not the only one who is drowning. Jungkook had gone home that night with hands still trembling from where they touched Jimin's jaw, with his pulse echoing louder than the city below. It was a moment unlike any he'd ever experienced before. But love doesn't erase consequences. And by morning, the real world came knocking. He woke to over 50 missed calls. His phone, even on silent, lit up so violently it felt like an explosion in his hand. Messages flooded every app, from the label, from media, from the other members. Even staff he hadn't spoken to in months were demanding clarity, control, containment. But there was no containing what had happened. Not now. Hashtags were still trending. Hashtag Jungkook confession, hashtag Jungkook on stage, hashtag truth on the final night. Photos of Jungkook kneeling. Jimin's frozen face. Conspiracy threads. Fan edits. Edited voiceovers. Emotional support tweets. Hateful rumors. It was all boiling in a public cauldron, and HYB's silence had become deafening. Namjoon's message was direct. Emergency meeting. 11 a.m. Don't be late. When Jungkook entered the building, everything felt different. Cameras were turned away. People avoided eye contact. The usual hallway greetings were replaced with stiff nods or silence. The walls of HYB weren't unfamiliar, but today they felt colder, like they'd seen too much. In the boardroom, all 6 members were already there, Seokjin with his arms crossed, Yoongi sitting low with the hat pulled over his eyes, Hoseok drumming his fingers nervously, Namjoon pacing, Taehyung with his back to the window. Jimin was there too. Jungkook's eyes locked with his for just a second, but neither of them spoke. Whatever had bloomed on that rooftop, raw, vulnerable, breathless, had no place in this room. Not yet. Namjoon was the first to speak. What the hell were you thinking? Jungkook sat down, his voice low. I wasn't. No kidding, Yoongi muttered. Namjoon took a sharp breath. You hijacked the final show of the tour to confess something the rest of us had no idea about. You put the team, the label, and Jimin, especially Jimin, under a microscope we didn't ask for. I know, Jungkook said. And I'm sorry. That's not enough, Seokjin said flatly. You didn't just hurt Jimin. You violated the trust we built with each other. You didn't even talk to us before going off script in front of millions of people. I thought I was going to implode, Jungkook said, trying to keep his voice calm. I didn't do it to betray anyone. I did it because I felt like if I didn't speak, I'd disappear. That's not an excuse, Hoseok said, softer but no less serious. That's a cry for help. And if you needed help, we were here. But I didn't believe that, Jungkook snapped. And that's on me. I know. But I've been carrying this for so long, and every time I tried to open my mouth, I felt like I'd destroy something. Guess what? Taehyung said bitterly, turning around. You did. Jungkook froze. Taehyung's eyes were unreadable. But they weren't cold. They were tired. Hurt. Protective. Jungkook looked back at Jimin again, but Jimin's expression hadn't changed. Neutral. Guarded. Perfectly unreadable. The silence dragged. It wasn't professional. It wasn't managerial. It was personal, an unraveling family trying not to come apart at the seams. Finally, Namjoon spoke again. HYB is going to release a statement. They want to frame this as creative vulnerability. They're calling it an artistic expression of emotional openness. That's bullshit, Yoongi said. Everyone knows this was personal. They know, Namjoon agreed. But the public eats up artistry. They'll buy it, and we'll survive it. Will we? Seokjin asked. Again, silence. Later that day, after the meeting broke and the room began to empty, Jimin didn't leave. Jungkook didn't either. They stayed in their chairs, opposite ends of the table, the silence between them growing too heavy to ignore. Jungkook finally spoke. Do you hate me now? Jimin's gaze was calm. Not soft. Not harsh. Just still. I don't know, he said. Do you regret what happened on the rooftop? No. Do you regret what I said? I regret the timing, Jimin said. Not the truth. Jungkook leaned forward, elbows on the table. Then what do we do? Jimin was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood. We talk. Privately. Away from cameras. Away from the others. And so they did. That night, Jimin came to Jungkook's apartment for the first time in almost a year. The place was clean. Too clean. Like Jungkook had scrubbed every trace of history off the surfaces, afraid of what Jimin might see. They sat on opposite ends of the couch at first. Just breathing. Just looking. No noise, but the hum of the fridge and the ticking wall clock. You remember the first time you kissed me? Jimin asked suddenly. Jungkook blinked. I remember. Do you remember what I said after? You said, don't make me a secret. Jimin nodded. You made me one anyway. I was scared. I know, Jimin said. I was too. A beat. But I was also tired of hiding. I thought if I protected it, it would last. No, Jimin said softly. You protected yourself. Not us. Jungkook winced. You're right. Another pause. Do you know how many nights I stayed awake, Jimin said, just wondering if I was the only one who remembered what we were? Jungkook looked up. You weren't. Silence again. Then Jimin shifted closer. Why now, Jungkook? Jungkook's voice trembled. Because watching you pull away slowly was worse than any backlash I could ever face. Because every time you laughed with someone else, I wondered if you'd finally found a place safer than me. Jimin's eyes welled up. You were never unsafe. You were just gone. I'm here now. Jimin studied him. Deep. Long searching. Then, slowly, he closed the distance. And for the first time, not on a rooftop, not in a dressing room, not behind stage, they kissed. No lights. No pressure. No secrets. Just lips, soft and slow. Like forgiveness. Like a new page. Like home. When they finally pulled apart, Jimin whispered, so what now? Jungkook smiled faintly. Now we write the rest. Together. And for once, Jimin didn't flinch. He nodded. Together. Jimin didn't want to look at the headlines anymore. Every tap on his phone sent a fresh wave of anxiety into his chest. Every message from friends, stylists, dancers, even his older brother, was layered with the same unease, masked concern disguised as casual curiosity. They were all trying to ask the same question without actually saying it. What's going on between you and Jungkook? He turned his phone face down on the kitchen table. He hadn't left Jungkook's apartment until sunrise. And even though the kiss they shared was quiet, gentle even, his heart was still rattling from everything it had unearthed. They had kissed before. But this one was different. This one was real. Unhidden. Without time limits, without restraint. And yet now, hours later, all Jimin could feel was the tightening coil of dread in his stomach. He knew something was coming. And it did. That afternoon, his manager called and told him HYB had summoned him and Jungkook to a private executive meeting. No lawyers. No press. Just internal damage control. The meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m. By 3:50, Jimin was standing in front of the mirrored elevator wall at HYB headquarters, adjusting the black cuffs of his coat like he was going into battle. His face looked calm in the reflection, but his hands betrayed him, slightly trembling. He took a deep breath and walked in. Jungkook was already there. He stood with his back against the wall near the boardroom, dressed in all black, arms crossed, hair slightly messy, eyes tired. When their eyes met, he gave the faintest nod. Neither of them smiled. Not here. Not now. The door opened, and they were let in. The boardroom was half filled with familiar faces, but none wore their usual expressions. The head of talent development, a senior PR director, 2 legal reps, and the co-CEO himself, Mr. Kong. Namjoon was also there, seated at the side. He wasn't speaking yet. Just watching. "Take a seat," Mr. Kong said. They obeyed. The room was quiet. Then the co-CEO leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "You do understand the magnitude of what you did on stage that night, correct?" Jungkook nodded once. "Yes." "And you, Jimin," he turned, voice clipped but not aggressive. "Did you know Jungkook was going to do that?" "No," Jimin said firmly. "I didn't." "And after the show?" Jimin hesitated. "We talked," he admitted. Mr. Kong tapped the table lightly. "I want you both to understand this isn't just a publicity flare. This isn't fan service. This isn't a scripted moment that got misread. This was real. That makes it volatile." Silence. One of the legal advisors leaned in. "There's speculation now about a relationship. Photos are being pulled from 5 years ago to now. People are dissecting lyrics, choreographies, interviews. This is quickly spiraling into a Jungkook truth movement." "We didn't ask for that," Jungkook said, voice calm but strained. "But you ignited it," the PR director shot back. "You kneeled. You cried. You confessed feelings. In front of a live audience and millions online. You handed them the spark." "I'm not denying that," Jungkook replied. "But it wasn't calculated. I had a breakdown. That wasn't a PR stunt." Mr. Kang's voice was suddenly steel. "But that doesn't stop the consequences." The legal advisor placed a folder on the table and opened it. "In the last 72 hours, we've had 43 sponsorship partners ask for clarification regarding your status. 2 of them have placed campaigns on hold. A third has withdrawn entirely." Jimin sat rigid, pulse rising. Mr. Kong continued. "Your actions impact more than just yourself. It affects brand relationships, the group's legacy, the upcoming enlistment schedules, and our international planning. It risks destabilizing everything we've built together." "So what are you saying?" Jungkook asked quietly. "That I should have stayed quiet forever?" "We're saying there's a reason idols don't do what you did," Mr. Kang said, flat. "You showed weakness. You made it personal. And you made it public. But that's what fans always say they want," Jungkook said. "Authenticity. Honesty." "To a point," the PR director cut in. "They want the illusion of intimacy, not the consequences of reality." Jimin's throat burned. "So what happens now?" There was a pause. Then came the warning. "We're not asking you to lie," Mr. Kong said. "But from this point forward, any interaction between the 2 of you must be handled with extreme caution. You may not address this situation publicly. No cryptic posts. No behind-the-scenes commentary. No ambiguous statements." Jungkook's voice was bitter. "So pretend again." "No," Mr. Kong replied. "Control the damage." "And if we don't?" The air grew thick. "You could be suspended from solo activities," the legal rep said. "Or worse, contracts can be reviewed, revised, terminated." Jimin flinched. "Are you threatening to fire us?" "We're protecting our investment," Mr. Kong answered. "And your future." Silence. Jungkook stood suddenly. "Then maybe you should let me go." The room froze. "What?" Namjoon's voice cut in, finally. Jungkook looked at him, not angry, resigned. "If my honesty is a liability, maybe it's better if I step back. From projects. From solo deals. From whatever makes me someone you need to manage instead of support." "Don't be dramatic," the PR director snapped. "I'm not," Jungkook said. "I'm just tired." Jimin stood too now. "You don't get to decide that alone." "I'm not trying to leave you," Jungkook turned to him. "I'm trying to take the pressure off you." "I didn't ask for that," Jimin's voice cracked. "Don't act like you're protecting me by disappearing again. That's not protection. That's cowardice. You saw what they said." "I don't care what they said," Jimin nearly shouted. "I care what you do next." Mr. Kang stood as well. Enough. This is not the place for personal scenes. Jimin turned to him. You made it personal when you threatened our bond. Your bond is not our concern. Your career is. Our career is built on our bond. Jimin's voice cracked from the weight of it. Silence again. Heavy. Choking. Then Mr. Kang sat again, finally showing signs of fatigue. Go home. Take 48 hours. No posts. No live streams. Let this cool down. Jungkook's jaw was tight. But he nodded. Jimin gave no answer. Just turned and walked out. Jungkook followed a few seconds later. They didn't speak in the hallway. Didn't speak in the elevator. But when they reached the ground floor, Jimin finally broke the silence. You don't get to protect me from things we're supposed to face together, he said. I'm trying to keep you from losing everything. You are everything. Jungkook stopped walking. The world outside buzzed with fans, cameras, taxis, city noise. But in that single sentence, time bent. He turned and kissed him again. Not out of rebellion. Not out of performance. But because some truths were bigger than systems. And this time, it wasn't secret. Someone took a photo. It went viral in 15 minutes. The internet exploded. And HYB didn't respond. Not yet. The photo was everywhere before the sun even set. A fan across the street had caught it. Not just a blurry frame or a questionable silhouette, but a crystal-clear shot. Jungkook and Jimin kissing under the awning of HYB's main building, just outside the revolving glass doors, their shadows stretching beneath them like a secret finally allowed to breathe. The image ripped through the internet like a typhoon. Within an hour, it had been reposted more than 2 million times. Fans weren't just reacting, they were mobilizing. Hashtag #WeSupportJungkook trended at #1 globally in under 40 minutes. TikTok flooded with edits. Fan theories that had been whispered for years suddenly had teeth. Screenshots, past interviews, moments between them captured in concert footage were recirculated like pieces of a puzzle everyone had finally been allowed to finish. But with support came chaos. Some fans cried betrayal. Others demanded clarity. Major sponsors pulled back. Global news outlets latched on like vultures. Idol romance confirmed. BTS fractures under internal scandal. HYB executives silent after bombshell revelation. HYB still hadn't released a statement. Not by nightfall. Not by morning. And every second of silence added more pressure to the already boiling pot. Inside the dorms, the atmosphere was suffocating. Jungkook hadn't been back since the meeting. He sat curled up on the couch in his apartment, hoodie pulled over his head, lights dimmed, phone buzzing nonstop beside him. He hadn't answered calls from HYB. He hadn't opened messages from Namjoon or Jeon. Even Taehyung had stopped reaching out. Only Jimin. Only he had called and stayed. And now, Jimin sat beside him on the same couch, silent. He held Jungkook's phone in his hand, scrolling through news updates, waiting for the inevitable storm to finally reach them. Are you okay? Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook didn't answer for a moment. I thought I'd be terrified, he finally said. But I'm just tired. Jimin nodded. Me too. Jungkook glanced sideways. Do you regret it? The kiss. Jungkook didn't respond. Jimin placed the phone down. No. A beat passed. I regret not doing it sooner. Jungkook closed his eyes. But then the knock came. Sharp. Firm. 3 times. Neither of them moved at first. But then Jungkook stood. Opened the door. Namjoon stood there. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, voice flat. We need to talk. Jungkook stepped aside. Namjoon entered, looked at Jimin briefly, then at the state of the apartment, the open pizza box, the darkened windows, the emotional fog that hung in the air like smoke. He didn't sit. I'm going to be honest, he began. HYB is in panic mode. They're trying to figure out whether to release a neutral statement, deny the relationship, or let this ride out with silence. Either way, they're throwing the responsibility on us. They want you to choose. Choose what? Jimin asked. Namjoon's jaw tensed. Whether you confirm it or bury it. Jungkook laughed. Not from humor, from disbelief. You mean lie? Or remain vague, Namjoon said. Let people interpret whatever they want. Jimin stood now, voice sharp. We already kissed in public, Hyung. What's the point of hiding now? Namjoon looked at them both. The point is the rest of the group. The sponsors. The endorsements. The balance. We've all worked for 10 years to get here. You might be ready to face the backlash, but are we? Jungkook stepped forward. So you're saying we have to pick between love and loyalty? No, Namjoon said, quieter now. I'm saying we have to weigh consequences. Jimin didn't look away. I'm done living for consequences. Then you better be ready to live with the fallout, Namjoon snapped. The air stiffened. You think I haven't been calculating this moment for years? Jungkook said suddenly. Every glance. Every lyric. Every time I stood 2 feet from him on stage and felt like I was holding back an earthquake. I've imagined this fallout more times than I've imagined freedom. Namjoon's voice was still. Then say that. Say it carefully. Say it smart. Jimin crossed his arms. You think the fans will turn on us? Not all of them, Namjoon replied. But the industry might. Korea might. Jimin looked him straight in the eyes. Let them. Namjoon sighed and finally sat. He looked at both of them, softer now. Do you love each other? No one moved. Then Jungkook said, yes. Jimin didn't flinch. Namjoon nodded slowly. Then fight for it. But don't be naive. This won't be romantic. This will be war. That night, they filmed a video. Just the 2 of them. No makeup. No filters. Just Jungkook and Jimin sitting side by side in a quiet room. Jungkook spoke first. This isn't a press release. This isn't damage control. This is just us. Jimin continued. We didn't plan for the photo to be taken. But we're not hiding anymore. We're not making a statement on behalf of BTS. We're not speaking for the company. We're just 2 people who've shared a decade of silence too heavy to carry anymore. They paused. Then Jimin said, we're not asking for your approval. But we hope for your understanding. The video was uploaded at 10:21 p.m. By 11 o'clock, the world had shattered. Some fans screamed with joy. Others posted heartbreak. Sponsors issued cautious statements. The media called it the most controversial idol revelation in K-pop history. But the loudest reaction of all came from ARMY. They defended. They fought. They rallied. Fan accounts posted resources on LGBTQ+ support. Hashtags of solidarity trended worldwide. Letters poured in. Messages from all corners of the globe. Videos of fans crying, cheering, shouting from rooftops. BTS had always stood for love, for truth, for being yourself even when it hurt. Now Jungkook and Jimin had become the embodiment of that message. The next day, HYB called another emergency meeting. But this time, the tone had changed. Not because of control, but because of public response. Because for the first time in the label's history, the fans had overpowered the system. Jimin sat outside the building afterward, head in his hands, sunglasses barely masking the tears on his cheeks. Jungkook crouched beside him. Are we really doing this? Jimin asked. We already did. But what now? Jungkook leaned in close. Now we live. Out loud. Together. The road ahead would be brutal. The interviews. The pushback. The false headlines. The fights they'd have to fight even when they were tired of fighting. But when Jimin looked into Jungkook's eyes, he knew. No stage, no contract, no storm could ever make him want to go back to silence. He took Jungkook's hand. And they walked forward. Not just as idols, but as themselves. Jeon had been silent through it all. He hadn't called. He hadn't texted. He didn't show up at meetings, didn't appear on group chat. After completing his military service and re-entering a world far more volatile than the one he'd left behind, Jeon watched from a distance. At first. But when the video of Jungkook and Jimin's confession went viral, and HYB's silence was broken by a weak, calculated press release full of vague language and PR gymnastics, Jeon knew he couldn't stay quiet anymore. He didn't announce his return. Didn't ask permission. He showed up at HYB uninvited. Walked into the building wearing a plain black t-shirt and jeans, no makeup, no fanfare, no management. Staff froze. Even the receptionist looked up like a ghost had just entered the lobby. Tell Kong I'm here, he said. No, scratch that, don't tell him. Just let me through. No one dared stop him. 10 minutes later, Jean stood in the same boardroom where Jungkook and Jimin had been warned, threatened, silenced. Now it was Jin's turn to speak. Let me be clear, he said, voice calm, measured, but electric. This company exists because of the 7 of us, not the other way around. If you think for 1 second that your reputation matters more than our humanity, you've lost the very soul of what made BTS unstoppable. Mr. Kong didn't interrupt. Jean kept going. You've always counted on us playing the game. Being clean. Being professional. Being quiet. You built your empire on our backs. And for a while, that was fine. We agreed. We understood the rules. But you don't get to shame them for breaking the silence you forced them into. This isn't about shame, the PR head tried to interject. No, this is about control, Jean cut in. And you've lost it. The room was stiff, silent. The only sound was Jin's voice. I came here because I watched the 2 of them do what none of us had the courage to do. Not because we didn't care, but because we were afraid. Afraid of this room. Afraid of the consequences. Afraid of becoming a liability to the machine we helped build. He stepped forward, placing both hands on the table. But they did it anyway. And instead of celebrating their honesty, you tried to cage it. Mr. Kang narrowed his eyes. You've been gone for over a year, Seokjin. You don't know the full context. Don't patronize me, Jean said. I watched every live stream. I read every headline. I saw Jungkook crying on stage with no one behind him but a million strangers and the one person who had the guts to stand beside him. That's the context. The legal advisor spoke up. Do you understand the contractual risk here? The moral clauses? The international brand. I understand exactly what this is, Jean interrupted again. This isn't about brand damage. This is about you losing the illusion that you control us. He turned to leave. But before I go, you should know something else. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. 2 days ago, I received a file anonymously. Audio. From one of your own closed-door meetings. He tapped play. The room filled with voices. Mr. Kang's voice. The PR director. The legal advisor. Calm, cold discussions about contingency plans, limiting screen time, isolating the couple, and most damning of all, a line spoken by Mr. Kang himself. If they don't cooperate, we freeze their contracts. No renewals. No solo support. We'll let them burn. Jean paused the audio. Do you want to keep talking about control? No one answered. Didn't think so. Jean left without another word. But the damage was already done. By the time the audio file leaked online 3 hours later, the fandom had erupted. Army's rage became a digital inferno. The hashtag #ProtectJimin and Jungkook went nuclear. Celebrities chimed in. LGBTQ+ advocates launched statements of solidarity. Journalists who once hesitated to touch idol relationships now published exposés on the systemic manipulation of idols under contract. Legal experts debated the enforceability of moral clauses in the court of public opinion. The company's stock dropped 7% overnight. Meanwhile, in the eye of the storm, Jimin sat in the corner of his apartment, shaking. Not because of the backlash, but because of Taehyung. He had called earlier that day. The call lasted 3 minutes. And it broke him. You should have come to me first, Taehyung had said. Jimin swallowed. I didn't know how. I was your best friend. You still are. No, I'm not, Taehyung cut in. Because best friends don't lie to each other for 3 years. Do you think I wanted to lie? You did it anyway. There was a pause. Static on the line. Then Taehyung spoke again. You and Jungkook made your choice. You chose each other. Now I have to choose too. What are you saying? Jimin whispered. I'm saying either you tell the truth to the group, or I will. Taehyung. I'm done protecting people who don't trust me. Then the line went dead. Jimin stared at his phone for a full minute after the call ended, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might bruise his ribs. Jungkook found him an hour later, still sitting on the floor, staring into nothing. What happened? He asked. Jimin looked up slowly. He's going to expose everything. Jungkook frowned. What do you mean, everything? Our relationship. Our past. What happened in Tokyo? That night at the dorm 3 years ago. All of it. Jungkook's stomach turned to ice. Why? Jimin's voice cracked. Because we didn't trust him. They sat in silence. Then Jungkook stood and paced. His hands were shaking. Do you blame him? No, Jimin whispered. Do you still love him? Jimin looked up sharply. Don't. I need to know. Jungkook. I need to know if this thing between us is just the result of regret and loneliness. It's not. Then why do you still protect him in your eyes? Because he was the first person who saw me, Jimin said. Before the lights. Before the fans. Before all of this. He saw me. And I didn't? Jimin stood. You saw what you wanted me to be. Silence. Then Jungkook whispered, that's not fair. Maybe, Jimin said. But it's true. Jungkook exhaled sharply, rubbing his face. What do we do? Jimin answered slowly. We tell the truth. All of it. Ours. His. The group's. We stop letting the company, the fans, and our own fear write the script for us. And if it destroys us? Jimin stepped closer. Then at least we go down free. That night, a new message appeared on Weverse. It was simple. From Jeon. A photo of all 7 of them, blurry and smiling, taken during training back in 2012. Caption, before it all got complicated. Followed by one from Jungkook. A photo of his hand and Jimin's hand intertwined. Caption, it's already complicated. But we're still here. And finally, from Jimin. A single sentence. I won't run anymore. By sunrise, Taehyung responded. Not with words. But with a photo of an old note Jimin had once written to him, never shared. It read, even if I can't say it out loud, I hope you always know I loved you too. And below that, Taehyung added, I know. The fandom lost its mind. But in a good way. In a terrifying, heart-wrenching, truth-exposing way. And somewhere in all the chaos, a new truth emerged. This wasn't the end of BTS. This was the beginning of something more honest than the world had ever dared to imagine. And it had only just begun. The dorm was not just a building. It was a memory box. It had seen their hunger. Their debut. The blood on their knees after endless choreography drills. Their quiet sobs in the dark when no one else was supposed to hear. It had absorbed their secrets like the walls themselves had hearts. And now it would be the witness to something far more fragile, truth unraveling after years of being buried beneath expectations and silence. When Jimin arrived at the dorm, Jungkook was already there, waiting outside. Neither said a word as they walked in. The hallway still smelled faintly of lemongrass detergent and old wood. Their footsteps echoed a little too loudly as they passed the shared living room, its couch still lopsided, the same dent in the armrest from that one time Taehyung fell asleep sideways after a shoot in 2015. Everyone was already inside the private meeting room, an old converted bedroom that the staff now referred to as the vault. Seokjin sat with a closed laptop in front of him, Yoongi leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, and Hoseok sat on the floor, legs crisscrossed, face unreadable. Namjoon stood by the window. And Taehyung? He sat in the middle of the couch, elbows on his knees, eyes cast low, holding something in his hand. When Jimin and Jungkook stepped in, no one greeted them. Just breath. Silence. And the weight of too many years pressing down. Jungkook spoke first. His voice was dry. We came to talk. Not to perform, Jimin added quietly. Namjoon turned around, eyes heavy. Good. Because no one here wants another performance. The door closed. No cameras. No handlers. No managers. Just the 7 of them. For the first time in what felt like forever. Sit, Seokjin said softly. They obeyed. Jimin's hands wouldn't stop fidgeting. Jungkook noticed, reached down, gently laced their fingers. Jimin didn't pull away. Yoongi looked at the gesture, then at their faces. So? Say it. Jungkook took a breath. We're in love. Taehyung's jaw clenched. Jimin looked down, inhaled slowly. We have been for a long time. How long? Seokjin asked, not accusing, just needing a number. Since before the Wings tour, Jimin whispered. There was a pause. Hoseok's voice broke it. That was 6 years ago. Jungkook nodded. And no one knew? Namjoon asked. Jimin finally looked up. Taehyung knew. All eyes turned to him. Taehyung's grip on the object in his hand tightened. It was a photo. An old Polaroid. Him, Jimin, and Jungkook. Faces young. Untroubled. Smiling like the world couldn't touch them. He placed it on the table, face down. I didn't know the truth, Taehyung said softly. I knew something was missing. Why didn't you say anything? Jungkook asked. Taehyung's eyes met his. Because I didn't want to be right. You were always right, Jimin whispered. You just couldn't bear it. Don't tell me what I could bear, Taehyung snapped. The tension spiked. Jungkook flinched. Jimin shut his mouth. Taehyung stood. He looked at Jimin, then Jungkook. I loved both of you, he said. Silence. He pointed at Jimin. I loved you first. Before the world knew your name. Then turned to Jungkook. And I loved you like a brother who I didn't want to lose. Jimin tried to speak, but his throat closed. I watched you two become the center of everything, Taehyung continued, voice cracking. And I thought, maybe if I just kept supporting you, I'd be enough. Maybe I could be your safe place. Maybe if I didn't ask questions, I'd stay close. Yoongi closed his eyes. I saw you holding hands backstage, Taehyung said, voice trembling now. I saw you sneak off during rehearsals. I saw the way you looked at each other and thought no one would notice. I noticed. Jimin wiped a tear that slipped down his cheek. And the night in Tokyo? Taehyung's voice broke. Jungkook stiffened. You think I didn't hear the door? Taehyung said. I was awake, Jimin. I was in the hallway when you left Jungkook's room crying. And the next morning, neither of you spoke. Jimin covered his mouth. The flashback hit like a wave. Tokyo, 2018. It was just after their last stage at the Tokyo Dome. They were tired. Raw. The fans had screamed like the sky was splitting in half. Jimin had knocked on Jungkook's door. They sat on the floor for over an hour, talking, hands barely touching. And then Jimin had kissed him. For the first time since the tour began. And then he'd pulled away. Because he saw fear in Jungkook's eyes. He left the room, heartbreaking. And didn't speak of it again. Not until months later. Now, back in the dorm, the memory sat like a scar between them. Why didn't you tell me? Taehyung asked. Because we didn't want to lose you, Jimin said. You lost me anyway, he replied. He sat back down, face in his hands. Jeon finally spoke. None of us knew how to handle this, he said. We're not trained for honesty. We're trained for survival. Namjoon nodded. We're 7 strangers who built a family out of trauma and ambition. It was always going to break somewhere. Yoongi looked at Jimin. Do you love him? Yes, Jimin said without hesitation. And you, he asked Jungkook. I'd tear it all down to protect him, Jungkook said. Even if it means burning. Seokjin wiped his eyes. Then stop hiding. Stop waiting for permission to be whole. Hoseok spoke softly. So what happens now? Jimin looked at Taehyung. I want you back, he said. Not as a secret. Not as a regret. As my friend. Taehyung stared at him. I don't know if I can forgive you, he said. You don't have to, Jimin replied. Just don't let me disappear. Taehyung didn't speak. He stood again. This time slower. And walked out. Jungkook stood, about to follow, but Jimin stopped him. No, he whispered. Let him go. That night, the dorm stayed silent. But something had shifted. Something sacred had finally broken, and from it, light began to bleed in. The fan meeting was never meant to happen. HYB had originally postponed it, citing internal scheduling conflicts, but the pressure from ARMY had grown too loud, too persistent, too unified. When the hashtags never stopped trending and the message boards flooded with demand, the company caved. But they didn't know that the event they thought would help extinguish the fire would instead fan it into an uncontrollable blaze. The location was intentionally small, an indoor venue in Seoul meant to hold under 1,000 people. Intimate, manageable, controlled. But nothing about this night would be controllable. Backstage, the members were quiet. Jeon leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes flicking between the entrance and the screen showing a live feed of the waiting audience. Hoseok sat with his elbows on his knees, rocking slightly, chewing the inside of his cheek. Namjoon paced again and again, stopping every now and then to rub his temples. Yoongi was the only one sitting still, silent and unreadable, staring at nothing, but taking in everything. Jungkook had been tapping his knee nonstop for 15 minutes, eyes darting to the door, waiting for one person. Jimin. When he finally walked in, the air shifted. His face was unreadable. His jaw set, his shoulders tense, his eyes alert, calm, but on the edge of something boiling beneath the surface. The others straightened unconsciously. Namjoon spoke first. "You sure you want to do this?" Jimin looked at him. "I have to." "Not for them," Jungkook added, standing now. "Only if it's for you." Jimin looked at him for a beat, then nodded. "It's for us." Jeon clapped his hands softly. "Then let's go." On stage, the lights warmed slowly. The room was packed, but quiet. No screaming this time. Just silence. Anticipation. And, maybe, fear. The members filed in one by one, greeted by 1,000 respectful, trembling, emotionally loaded stares. This wasn't just another fan meeting. This was a reckoning. Namjoon took the mic first, his voice calm but a little slower than usual. "Thank you for being here. We know this moment is unlike anything we've ever shared before." He passed the mic to Jeon. Jeon, always the smooth one, smiled gently. "There have been a lot of questions. A lot of speculation. A lot of emotion. We don't take that lightly." Yoongi added next, "We've always said we'd be honest. So tonight, that's what we'll try to be." Then the mic passed to Jungkook. He looked out into the crowd. He wasn't shaking. "I didn't come here tonight to justify anything," he said. "Only to tell the truth." There were no cheers. Only stillness. "And the truth is, I've been in love with Park Jimin since the moment I realized I wasn't breathing right when he left the room." Jimin closed his eyes. Murmurs erupted in the audience. Some hands flew to mouths. Some tears welled immediately. Jungkook kept going. "I hid it. For years. Because I thought I had to. Because I was scared. Because the machine we're in, the industry, the label, even the expectations of some of the people we love, made it feel like telling the truth was the worst thing we could do." He passed the mic to Jimin. Jimin held it for a second before he spoke. "My turn." He took a breath. "I've spent most of my career making people feel something. Through lyrics, through movement, through silence. But the thing I didn't let anyone see was me." Another breath. "I love him too." The room exhaled. "But this isn't just a love story," Jimin continued. "This is about pain. About silence. About learning how to exist in a space that tells you your truth is dangerous." A fan in the front row began crying, shoulders shaking. Jimin stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "And I have to confess something else," he said, voice shaking now. "Not just to you, but to the members. Especially taehyung." The entire room tensed. "I lied to you," Jimin said. "I lied for years. About what happened in Tokyo. About the kiss. About what I felt. About who I was afraid of losing." Taehyung didn't look up. He stared at the floor. "I was scared," Jimin continued. "Not just of the industry, but of hurting the people who loved me most. You were my best friend. And I betrayed that by keeping you in the dark." The silence was deafening. Taehyung didn't move. And then he did. He stood. Walked slowly to center stage. Jeon made a move to intervene, but Namjoon touched his arm. "No. Let it happen." Taehyung took the mic from the stand. And looked out at the crowd. "I want to say something," he said, voice raw. He turned to Jimin. And for the first time in days, their eyes locked. "I was in love with you too." Gasps rippled across the room like thunder. Jimin's face fell. Taehyung wasn't done. "And it hurt," he said. "It hurt to watch you choose him and not tell me. It hurt to be close enough to know something was there, but not close enough for the truth." He turned to Jungkook. "But I don't hate you." Jungkook looked stunned. "I hated the silence," Taehyung said. "But not you." He stepped back, looked at the audience now. "I've made mistakes. I've said things I shouldn't. Felt things I didn't know how to name. But I'm here. I stayed. We all did." He handed the mic back to Jimin. And walked off the stage. The crowd stood. Not in applause. In solidarity. And then something happened no one expected. A fan shouted, "Thank you." Then another. And another. until the room erupted not in chants or screams, but in grateful, emotional, deeply shaken voices. Thank you. Thank you. We love you. That night, the footage was not edited. HYB posted the entire session raw. No background music. No spin. Just truth. The internet exploded again. But this time, it wasn't war. It was healing. The industry trembled. But the world? The world listened. Because for the first time in the history of K-pop, love wasn't choreographed. It was lived. And it was beautiful. The morning after the fan meeting, the world felt different. Not quieter, but clearer. The headlines didn't scream scandal anymore. They pulsed with awe, confusion, and something that had rarely been granted to idols, respect. Overnight, the footage of Taehyung's raw confession and Jimin's tearful apology had amassed over 70 million views. It wasn't just viral. It was historical. Every major media outlet had dubbed it the night that redefined idol culture. But inside the dorm, silence had returned. Not the heavy silence of unspoken things, but the fragile, still kind that comes after a storm. The kind that feels like peace, but still holds the echo of thunder. Jimin sat on the couch in the corner, knees pulled to his chest, sipping a now lukewarm cup of barley tea. He hadn't slept. He had cried quietly, uncontrollably, after Taehyung walked off stage. Not from guilt. Not even from regret. But because he had remembered everything. The dorm in 2015 when Taehyung had first given him a bracelet without saying why. The midnight karaoke after their first award win where Jungkook had touched his hand for just 1 second longer than normal. The day they all watched Jeon cry behind his sunglasses at the airport and said nothing. The backseat rides with Yoongi, who always pretended not to notice when someone wiped away a tear in the reflection of the window. All those quiet moments, too sacred to name, suddenly spilling out into the open. Jungkook entered the room quietly. His hair was messy. He was still wearing the same black hoodie from last night. His voice was raspy when he spoke. They're asking for a press tour. Jimin looked up slowly. Who? HYB. The sponsors. Variety shows. Talk segments. Late night. Daytime. America. Japan. Europe. Jimin blinked. They want us to capitalize? Jungkook hesitated, then nodded. They say it's a chance to control the narrative. To show unity. Jimin exhaled. Of course. But that's not all, Jungkook added. Mr. Kang asked for a final group meeting. Jimin's hands tightened around his mug. When? Today. 3 p.m. Jimin placed the mug down gently and stood. Then we give them an answer, he said. The meeting wasn't in a boardroom. It was in their old practice room. The one with scuffed mirrors, a few broken tiles on the floor, and the ghost of who they used to be etched into every corner. Mr. Kang stood at the front, surrounded by executives and staff. But the tension was thinner now. Less aggressive. More watchful. The members arrived slowly, one by one. Namjoon. Seokjin. Hoseok. Yoongi. Taehyung. Then Jimin. Then Jungkook. Mr. Kang spoke first. Last night was historic, he said. And we acknowledge that. We also acknowledge that this was not a scripted or planned event, and yet. Jeon interrupted him. No more yets? Just speak. Mr. Kang paused. Then let me be direct. BTS is standing at a crossroads. The media storm is far from over. The fandom is powerful, but divided. The sponsors are returning, but cautious. And we, your agency, must decide how to proceed. Yoongi folded his arms. Proceed with what? Continuation, Mr. Kang said. Or conclusion. A chill passed through the room. You mean disbandment, Hoseok said flatly. We mean retirement of the brand, Mr. Kang replied. As a group, you've all accomplished more than any artist in history. Perhaps now is the time to bow gracefully. You can pursue your solo projects, your passions, your peace. No, Taehyung said instantly. Everyone looked at him. He stepped forward. You don't get to retire us. Only we get to make that choice. And you think the public will keep forgiving? The PR advisor cut in. You think the next scandal won't break you? We are the scandal, Jungkook said. And we're still here. Mr. Kang looked to Jimin now. And you? What do you say? Jimin didn't speak. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. A letter. He handed it to Mr. Kong. "You wanted a narrative," he said. "There's mine." Mr. Kong opened it, eyes scanning silently. Then he began to read aloud. "To those who made me, broke me, and carried me through the in-between. I am Park Jimin. I am an idol. I am a man who loved in silence, who betrayed his own heart to protect someone else's image. I am guilty of hiding, but I am not guilty of loving. And if this is the end of the path we've walked together, then let it be the end we write with our own hands, not with the shame you keep trying to feed us." A pause. "We are not here because we fit a mold. We're here because we broke it. Again and again. And I will not let our ending be one where we apologize for telling the truth." The room was dead silent. Mr. Kang slowly refolded the letter. He looked at the group. "Well," he said quietly, "then I suppose it's your choice." He left. The room remained quiet for several long seconds. Then Jeon clapped his hands. One more comeback. Everyone turned. "What?" Namjoon asked. "One last album," Jeon said. "But this time, our story. Not what the company writes. Not what the market expects. Just us." Taehyung smiled faintly. "You mean, the truth?" "Yes," Jeon said. "All of it." Jungkook looked at Jimin. "You in?" Jimin nodded, once. Namjoon stepped forward, placing a hand on Jin's shoulder. "Then we do this together. No label politics. No fake narratives. Just BTS. The way we should have been all along." Yoongi finally smiled. "Let's burn it down." The following months blurred. Recording. Writing. Filming. Fighting. Healing. Their final album was titled The Seventh Truth. Each track written by a different member. Each one raw. Personal. Some painful. Some joyful. All honest. One track, written by Jimin and Jungkook together, was called Home Is You. It broke global streaming records in 4 hours. When the album dropped, they performed live. Just once. On the rooftop of their old dorm. No fans. No backup dancers. Just the 7 of them, wind in their hair, the city beneath them, singing their truth into the sky. And at the end, they bowed. Together. When the performance ended, the cameras stayed rolling. Jimin stepped forward and looked directly into the lens. "We're not saying goodbye," he said. "We're saying this is what it looks like to finally be free." Behind him, Jungkook took his hand. The others joined them. And for once, the world didn't ask for anything more. Because they had finally given everything. And it was enough. It was always enough.